Okay, let's start with the proof of concept for demonstration. Before going into details, let me explain you what you are seeing on the screen. So, on the left part of the screen, you can see the dashboards of the different marketplace participants. Then on the right side, we have the Azure Storage Explorer that we will use later on to see the actual assets stored on the backend storage services of each participant, which in the context of this demo is basically the Azure nodes they have deployed on their premises to store their own data. And finally, on the bottom part of the screen, you can see the logs of all the components involved on this proof of concept scenario. So as we already introduced before, in this demo, we have three different marketplace participants. The first one is Company One, a provider based in Europe, in Spain. Actually, company location is not really important, but it has been included as one of the claims with its verifiable credential for demo purposes, because as we will see later on, it will help us to demonstrate authorization capabilities. Then we have Company 2, based in France, Europe as well, which is also a provider. And finally, we have Company 3, which is based outside Europe in US, and happens to be a company that only acts as consumer and does not have any configured asset. So let's go back to Company 1 dashboard and focus on the offering lifecycle part. But remember that this part is a precondition for this proof of concept, and the SEDIMARK approach has been shown on the previous demonstration. So I will just focus on the high-level concepts, which are quite similar to those of SEDIMARK, for you to have a better understanding of this particular scenario. So here we can see that Company 1 has defined 4 different assets. So one data set, one AI model, and a couple of images, which serve us to model both text and binary data. Together with the asset, this provider has also defined a couple of security policies. And as mentioned before, we have generated an EU-restricted policy, which is modeled as an ODRL policy that only gives permission to participants located within Europe. Besides, we have also generated a basic and restricted policy. Now, the combination of both assets and policies are what we know as offerings, and offerings are the products that are registered and advertised in the SEDIMARK Marketplace. Policies can be applied when a participant tries to retrieve offering descriptions or when trying to contracting them. In this case, there are 3 offerings. So we have one advertising data set and one advertising the 2 images, which are both available to any participant in the marketplace, so not restricted. And then we have another one advertising an AI model, which is restricted to participants from within Europe. As said before, this is just for demo purposes, because remember that marketplace providers are free to choose the policies for their own offerings. So if we check Company 2 dashboard, we can see that it has defined 2 assets as well. So one data set, one AI model, publishing the 2 corresponding offerings in a similar way as Company 1. Lastly, Company 3 does not bring any asset into the marketplace. Obviously, we can also check the Azure Storage Explorer to see the actual resources available there. So I'll refresh the information so you can see the up-to-date one. We can see that Company 1 has one blob container with the 4 assets we saw before. So AI model, dataset, and the 2 images. And the same for Company 2. So it has a single blob container with its AI model and dataset. And as expected, Company 3 does not even have any available blob container to explore. So then we can focus on the discovery stage. So let's check the catalog. And as already explained, Company 3 is not authorized to access the AI model offerings and can only see those offerings advertising data sets and images. So, of course, Company 2 local catalog do show AI models from Company 2 and Company 1 as well, because its credential authorizes it to do so. Okay, so now let's move on with the demo and focus on the actual negotiation and asset exchange. And let's say we have discovered an offering describing an asset that we want to acquire. For example, let's try to purchase image 1. We click on the negotiate button, and once finished, we can see that we have an agreement with the provider, in this case, Company 1. Of course, there are several things happening behind the scenes between connectors using DataSpace protocol messages. And actually, authentication is based on JSON Web Tokens signed with participant IDs, where the counterpart authorized queries following the centralized verification methodologies, quite similar to those presented in Proof of Concept 1 demonstration before. Unfortunately, time constraints doesn't allow us to delve into these interactions, but of course, we can do it later on if you consider it. Once the agreement is in place, the consumer can request to start the transfer process. And for this to happen, the consumer can select the destination where the asset will be stored. For the sake of simplicity, this proof of concept scenario can only interact with Azure Storage API, but additional technologies will be supported and available as well in the future. Examples of those technologies can be NGSILD Context Broker or Amazon S3 APIs, which play an important role on the data processing and AI pipelines, as you have seen this morning, and we'll also see on some of the following proof of concept demonstration. As before, once we initiate the process, there are several things happening behind the curtains. And again, I won't go into a very detailed explanation to save some time, but feel free to ask for it later on. Long story short, as we are using DataSpace protocol push model for this demo, the provider's data plane initiates sending data to a consumer endpoint using an agreed wire protocol, which in this demo is Azure Storage Protocol. Before that, Consumer's connector carries out a resource provisioning stage, which is technology dependent and based on the provided information about the transfer destination endpoint. For example, in the case of the Azure protocol, it creates a new blob container and generates a temporal write permission token for the provider to use. All this information is exchanged using the DataSpace protocol control plane. As expected, once the transfer process has finished and the agreement has been fulfilled, we can check company 3 Azure node to confirm the asset is there. So we refresh its blob containers and we can see the up-to-date data, which is a new container there, where the negotiated image 1 asset is available. Obviously, we can download the image from the local Azure container to see what's there. And it happens to be, if it's open, a very nice family picture of our last plenary meeting in Helsinki, which is also a really good way of finishing this demonstration. So thank you very much for your attention, and this concludes this presentation.